What's the most disturbing unsolved mystery ever? The West Mesa bone collector. The bones of dozens of women were found at a construction site. No other clues. The disappearance of Brandon Swanson. During the early morning hours of May 14, 2008, 19-year-old Brandon Swanson disappeared under mysterious circumstances from a rural area northeast of Marshall in southwestern Minnesota. Numerous searches have been conducted of the area and bodies of water surrounding the location where Brandon's car was found. After nearly 3 years, those searches have yet to find any physical evidence of what may have happened to Brandon. With no body and very little evidence, it is impossible to know what happened to Brandon, leaving every possibility open for speculation. Technically not unsolved, since everyone can guess what happened to her, but it's one of the creepiest in my opinion. Alyssa Turney was a teenager who disappeared in 2001. Her stepfather, Michael Turney, was obsessed with her. He stalked her at work, put cameras in the vents to spy on her, and made her sign contracts to say he never molested her. Michael picked her up from school early on May 17, 2001, and she's never been seen since. Her half-sister, Sarah Turney, has an amazing podcast called Voices for Justice which explains the case in detail, and because of her Michael Turney was arrested in August 2020. The death of Rebecca Zahor has stuck with me. Zahor's nude body was found hanging from a balcony, with her wrists and ankles bound and hands behind her back. Her death was ruled a suicide. As if that wasn't strange enough, 2 days prior to her death, the 6-year-old son of her boyfriend fell down a staircase and died. His death was ruled an accident. There's a lot to read about this case, and I highly recommend it if you're into true crime. The case of Adam immediately came to mind. Unidentified male child whose torso was discovered in the River Thames in London, United Kingdom, on the 21st of September 2001. Dubbed Adam by police officers, the unidentified remains belonged to a black male, around 4 to 8 years old, who had been wearing orange girls' shorts. The post-mortem showed that Adam had been poisoned. His throat had been slit to drain the blood from his body, and his head and limbs had been expertly removed. Investigators believe the child was likely from southwestern Nigeria, and that several days before his murder, he was trafficked to the United Kingdom for a Muti ritual sacrifice. To date, nobody has been charged with Adam's murder, and his true identity remains unknown. The disappearance of the Beaumont children. The Beaumont children are siblings who disappeared in 1966. There are still to this day investigations ongoing to try and find the remains of these children. There have been foundations of sheds and houses dug up. The children have never been found, and the suspect or suspects has never been identified. I remember watching the Unsolved Mysteries episode about a person in 1977 who would send creepy anonymous letters to random folks in a small town, actually threatening ones. 2. The sender started by mailing up a woman and telling her, if I remember right, that they knew she was cheating on her husband with a superintendent, something she vehemently denied. Then they threatened her husband by saying he'd be in danger if he did not stop the affair. The couple decided to take it upon themselves to hunt the sender down. That ended with the husband dead in his crashed pickup truck. The sender kicked the wife while she was down by leaving threatening signs along her bus route, at least one of which had an actual booby trap on it. They found and arrested a suspect, but it's still unknown today if he's the actual sender. He denies it. The idea that somebody has been quietly studying your life just so they could begin to anonymously blackmail you or make up a rumor to blackmail you with is pretty damn scary. Addendum. In 2021, a forensics professional claimed that the police were right all along and the suspect who was released by then was the sender, but the massive hole in her claim is how he was still able to write letters during his time in prison. In my opinion, it's the city of San Francisco train derailment that occurred in Hardin, NV on the 8th of December 1939. The train, run by the Southern Pacific Railroad at the time, derailed at a bridge over the Humboldt River at a speed range of 60 to 90 miles per hour. The accident resulted in 24 fatalities and multiple injuries. Days later, investigators discovered tools at the bottom of the Humboldt River, determining that the wreck was caused by sabotage of the rails. A friend I went to school with from 6th 12th grade was driving home when a car pulled up next to his, and the driver shot him in the head, killed him instantly. This was about 7 years ago. No one has any idea why or who the shooter was. No one has ever said anything. He had no enemies, was universally liked, never hurt anyone. He was 20. Our community is not large. Someone knows something, but has never come forward. Real shame. Had a bright future. Just yesterday my colleague told me a personal account of a kidnapping of her friend. This happened when colleague and her friend were 10 years old. One day instead of going straight home, as they usually did, they went to the store to buy some candy. When they left the store some guy stopped them. He started talking to the friend all like, "Your dad sent me to take you home. I totally know you, since you were baby, blah blah blah." Heavily paraphrased, but you get the gist of it. So the friend got convinced that he really is there to take her home. So she agreed to go with him. This guy also offered ride to my colleague as well, but she refused, and so this guy just drives off with the friend. There was a police search and everything. 25 years has passed since then, and no trace of her was ever found. Colleague thinks that he picked her friend specifically because they were athletes at the time and the school put their photos in the newspaper quite often. Jessica Chambers. She was set on fire in her car and had gasoline poured down her throat. Paramedics found her walking down the lane on fire. The only part of her body that wasn't burned was the bottom of her feet. She did not survive. Police found a suspect, but did not have enough evidence to charge him. Paramedics were so traumatized by what they saw, they had to go through therapy and broke down on stage during interviews. She tried to name her attacker, but her throat was so destroyed, she couldn't be understood. The Delphi murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German. Two teenage girls hiking on a trail in Delphi, Indiana, walking across a bridge. One of them spots a creepy guy following them on the bridge and even films it. There's audio recording of suspected bridge guy ordering them to go down the hill. They were murdered and found not far from the bridge they were on. That was years ago, and the murder is nowhere closer to being solved. Even with video of the suspect, the bridge guy. There's been new developments in the last year or two where people thought it might be some guy, but he got ruled out. Now it's a father/son suspect situation right now, and people seem to be holding out hope it's them. I personally don't think it is, but in any case, it's been years now. Doesn't look to be solved anytime soon. Very sad situation. The Ibadan Forest of Horror in Nigeria. A local taxi driver goes missing, and his friends create a makeshift search party and investigate a forest. Instead of finding their friend, they find an abandoned school or factory that have the remnants of a hellish torture/murder, ritual killing and human trafficking. 8 survivors were rescued. Numerous body parts, rotting corpses and personal artifacts were found. The perpetrators were never found, although local politicians and ritualists were suspects. Whilst this discovery is disturbing, the mystery for me is that the original taxi driver still hasn't been found. Boy in the Box, 1957 Philadelphia. Warning, graphic details. This story just makes me so sad and sticks out to me as a true crime junkie, especially with the recent case of a child being found in a Las Vegas suitcase that is still under investigation. Basically, a young boy whose age was estimated to be 3 to 7 years old was found in a box naked and mutilated with bruises on the side of a road in Philadelphia. It was strange, because the boy appeared to have been very malnourished but was recently groomed, haircut, fingernails all trimmed. He was covered in scars, some surgical, suggesting he had previously been taken care of. Evidence suggests he was taken care of by a possible parent/guardian before he was taken into custody of his abuser. Cause of death determined to be blunt force trauma. How anyone could do something like this is just foul and disturbing to say the very least. The worst part is, it's just a big mystery. Almost nothing to go off of. There wasn't anyone matching his description reported missing. There wasn't any record of this kid. His pure existence was a mystery. Nothing came of the case. Even all these years later, there were some leads, but they didn't result to much, despite heavy media coverage and a search to find who this boy was. Some theories include that his parents did this to him, which would explain why he was previously in good condition. Then they never reported him missing after they killed him. And back then it was easier to not have record of a child that probably wasn't born in a hospital, that he was a victim of trafficking. The cleaning and grooming of him before he was dumped wasn't to pay some sort of respect to him, but to remove of evidence that might have been on his body, or any defining features like his hair. What happened to him? And who did this? Why the box? Why was he kept malnourished but haphazardly groomed before being dumped on the side of the road? Who is he?